Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Steve Krasner. He is here to help us nudge our kids' imagination. He'll also be celebrating his kids' books, including Why Not Call It Cow Juice. Before we invite Steve into the studio, we want to let you know about a new resource we think both families and authors will find really, really helpful. Our friend Marla Humer, you may remember her. She's been on the show a number of times to celebrate her wonderful children's books. The Big Move was her most recent book, The Circus Fish, and also Andrew the Blue-Eared Puppy. All of those books are fantastic. They're all certified great reads. Well, Marla decided that she wants to celebrate authors, and she's created a new page on her website called Celebrating Authors. Of course, we love celebrating authors and celebrating great children's book, and we love the fact that Marla is doing the same on her new page. You want to check it out. If you're a parent looking for a great book, you definitely want to check it out to see if you can find a book that you want to add to your family library. And if you're an author, you absolutely want to check it out and see if Marla would like to add your book to her page. You go to thinkaheadkids.com and click on her Celebrating Authors link at the top of her page. Joining us right now for one of my favorite places in the entire world, East Greenwich in Rhode Island. He is here. He's a children's author. He is a sports writer. He covered the Boston Red Sox for over 20 years. He's also the driving force behind a great website called Nudging the Imagination. Please welcome to the show, Stephen Krasner. Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I am wonderful. Really excited to have you on. Talk about somebody who's done it all. Children's books, writing, covering the Sox, teaching, writing to kids in college and in underserved communities. What a fantastic career you've had.
Yes, thanks. It's amazing what writing has done for me, the different careers. And as I like to tell kids in the classroom, I didn't grow up wanting to be a sports writer. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. And I played at in Cranston, Rhode Island High School, and I played at Columbia University. I was pretty good, but apparently not good enough. No one wanted a 5'8", 125-pound second baseman who could drop down the bunt. It was before expansion. That's all I can figure. But as I tell kids, because I could write, I spent 33 years getting paid to watch games. I got to go to World Series and Super Bowls, and I didn't just get to go. I got paid to go because I could write. So as I like to tell them, everyone has a passion, and writing can help you stay connected to that passion and maybe even, as in my case, make a living at it.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you mentioned that because there's, there are a number of really kind of select careers that are just have a spotlight on it all the time, whether it's a professional athlete, a professional dancer, a singer, a movie star. And lots of kids growing up want to be a dancer. They want to be a singer. They want to be in a band. Mm-hmm. But they just, but there's also a million other people wanting that same job. And there's only so many of those jobs that go around. And a lot of times kids think if they don't hit the top, then they're a failure. Right. And that's not true. There's a lot of ways, as you demonstrate, that you can be a part of the thing that you love so much, not be in front of the camera, but, still make a living and find lots of joy and happiness.
Exactly. I mean, my office was Fenway Park for the most part. I mean, I traveled to road games, but in essence, that was my office. So, yes, there are always different it's great to shoot for the moon. You know, you want to be a professional basketball player, football player, baseball player. That's great. Try it. But as you pointed out, there are a gazillion kids trying to do the same thing. So it's nice to have a plan B and a plan C and stay connected to that passion.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with my daughter when she was younger, and she was quite a talented dancer. And everybody would tell her, "You are the best dancer at this studio. You're amazing. You're going to have this great career." And she was always very, very wise beyond her years. I remember after hearing that from someone, she got into the van as we were driving home, and she said, "They don't realize that I might be the best dancer at this studio, but there's probably 1,000 dance studios in Massachusetts and probably 10,000 dance studios across the United States, and there's a best dancer at every one of those studios, and who knows where I line up amongst that lineup."
And that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But you know, you talk about dreams, and obviously one of your dreams is to highlight reading with your kids. You know, and I can remember being roughly 9 years old. I have an older brother and a younger sister. I was 3 years in the middle, each one basically. And I remember being on her bed reading her a book. It was an Uncle Wiggily story. I don't know if you remember Uncle Wiggily, the old rabbit gentleman with Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy and whatever. So I was on the bed reading her the book, and you know how you have moments that you just remember, you can just picture being back there in that time. Well, I can remember that moment. I remember sitting on that bed thinking to myself, you know what? One of these days, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a children's book one of these days. And ultimately, I did. But that's where dreams, you know, that's where you start to think about things. And reading and writing obviously go hand in hand, because you can't have one without the other. You can't read something that hasn't been written. And if you write something, you want people to read it. So there's that connection that's there, even though sometimes in schools and education, the reading teacher and the writing teacher are separate. And no, I don't do writing, I do reading. Well, but you can't have one without the other. So while I understand it, I mean, the bottom line is, and it's all about, as I'm sure you tell your listeners, it's all about enjoying the words, you know, having fun with the words. One of the things when I'm in the classroom with my Nudging the Imagination workshops, I conduct interactive collaborative story writing type sessions. And one of the things I like to say to the students, especially when we're dealing with with fiction, is that there is no right or wrong. That's one great thing about writing, you know. I mean, you want to have your elephant named Giuseppe? That's fine. He's Giuseppe Elephant. And you want him to, you know, swim and, you know, and do the backstroke and win an Olympic medal? Fine. That's your story, you know. And so we need to show them, which is what you're trying to highlight here, that words can be fun, reading can be fun, you know, and it's a nice bonding experience with parents, especially when kids are younger, you know, and even if they don't understand all the words, it's that closeness, that joy, because the joy you feel with reading your favorite picture books to your kids is going to translate to them. It's going to seep into their brains, and they're going to have fun with words, and sooner or later they're going to pick out words, and that's why, you know, I've written some picture books, but we must have hundreds of books in our home here from our kids, and we have 3 kids, and now we have 3 grandchildren and another one on the way, and those books are still there. You know, we still pull out those books and read those same books to our grandkids.
That's wonderful, and you're so right. There is that bonding experience. You know, we talk about all the benefits that kids get from having their parents, having a caregiver read to them, having an older sibling read to them, and certainly it's that bonding experience is so very, very important. But I think there's a lot of other benefits that we get too, and I think that we forget that as much as the kids love having their parents read to them, having their grandparents read to them, parents, I loved it. It was one of my favorite things to do every day. Coming home, you know, if I was driving home from Philadelphia after putting on a show and just dealing with the traffic through Connecticut, and, you know, finally get home and you're exhausted and you think to yourself, the last thing I want to do is pick up a picture book and read to my kids. But boy, every time I did it, it would just recharge my batteries. It just bring a lot of joy into my life.
Sure.
Yeah. And, one of the things, too, that I think we forget, we always, when we hear reading with your kids, you think picture books and reading with your young kids and reading with those kids who can't read on their own and looking at the pictures. But you, for over 20 years, you were writing about the Red Sox. And I am sure that there are many families, whether it was over the breakfast table or at night, would read those stories that you were writing about Big Papi and Pedro Martinez and Bill Buckner, and reading those aloud to each other and looking at the pictures that accompanied those stories. So I think we should remember that the newspaper and magazines, whether they're actually on paper anymore or digitally, those are also some great things that we can share with our kids orally.
Exactly. And as a writer, from that side of it, you want to write, and I tell kids this all the time, again, with my Nudging Imagination programs, that you want to write so clearly with so much description that the reader can see what's going on just through your words. And you want to make sure that, and I think I became a better sports writer when I started writing children's books. Because when you write a children's book, every word is important. Now, obviously, no matter what you're writing, words should be there for a reason. Mm-hmm. You're not throwing in extra clutter just to fill up the page or, just to get the 5 pages because that's what you need to do. But every word should be there for a reason. Now, when you're writing a picture book, clearly there are so few words on each page that it's even more important that they become meaningful and that they're conveying the picture of what you're trying to say. Because a successful picture book, you should be able to cover the illustrations with your hands and just read the words and be able to see the story. And obviously the reverse works as well. Cover the words and see the illustrations, and you should still know the story. So it's tighter writing, and I think it helped me become a better sports writer because I wanted to paint that picture with my words. I wanted to make those words come to life in the reader's mind so that when they are reading them across the breakfast table, let's say, if they hadn't seen the game or followed it pitch by pitch on the computer as time went on, I wanted them to be able to feel as if they had been in my seat at Fenway Park, watching the game through my eyes and seeing what transpired.
Stephen, one of the things that you shared with me before we started this interview was that the first World Series you covered was 1986, and everybody here in New England remembers a ball rolled through Bill Buckner's legs, and the Mets won, and the Sox, who were so close to winning their first World Series in over 100 years, I guess, it evaporated overnight.
Right.
What was it like when you sat down to write that part of the story? Did you have tears in your eyes?
Well, one thing that happens when you're a sports writer is you lose some of the fan in you because you have a job to do, you have a time pressure, and it's about the story. It's about, when's my story due next, and who do I need to talk to, and suppose he's not at his locker, and who else should I talk to? And in the case of Bill Buckner, it was a Saturday night. I was doing what we call sidebars, side stories. And because of the timing, the deadlines on a Saturday night, keep in mind, this is way before the internet, right? So there's no way on a Sunday paper that even a small portion of your readership was going to receive a newspaper with the final story in it. So meanwhile, the columnist and the beat writer who was writing the news story, they were feverishly rewriting their story because it went from the Red Sox winning their first World Series in 100,000 years to, oh no, they lost Game 6 and now we go to Game 7. It wasn't even the end of the World Series. So, because my story was a side story, I didn't have time to do anything. So that gave me freedom of time to go to the locker room, where I was one of maybe, as I recall, only like 4, 5, 6 people surrounding Bill Buckner after the game. And he had this big bushy mustache and always this strange little grin on his face. And he pulled a pair of sunglasses from the top of his locker when he saw us. and he said, you know what? I should probably put these on right now because I don't think Red Sox fans are too happy with me right now. But he said, you know what? You play as many games as we do. You're going to make errors. It's going to happen. Things happen. But that's okay. We'll get them in Game 7. Now, from a newspaper point of view, because so few people received the final game story of Game 6 in their newspaper on Sunday when they picked up the paper, you rewrote the stories for Monday's paper. Okay, with a different angle to it and whatever, because just to be a matter of record, here's what happened in Game 6. But had they played Game 7 on Sunday, the Monday paper would have been filled with stories about someone won, someone lost, there was a hero, there was a home run, there was a bad pitch, there was an error, there was a whatever. And by the way, on page D13, Red Sox lost Game 6. Okay? But now, I always feel Bill Buckner was unfairly vilified because what happened was Game 7 on that Sunday was rained out. So therefore, all these people who needed to fill stories for the next day started to focus on Bill Buckner's error. Now, also keep this in mind. Had he made the play, it's not as if the Red Sox would have won the World Series right then and there. The game was tied. So obviously they lost all chance of winning because of the error, but it wasn't as if it was a slam dunk. Oh, they would be, throwing the champagne around, if he'd made the play. And then also in Game 7, the Red Sox had the lead and lost. And Bill Buckner had nothing to do with that. And yet he was always the one who was unfairly, in my estimation, called the reason they didn't win the World Series.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I think we forget, and so many of the people who are listening to this, even parents, there was a time where you couldn't just pick up your phone and punch a little button and find out what the score was and whatever game it is you want to know instantaneously. There was this lag.
Exactly.
So yeah, wow, talk about memories.
Well, see, and that's why reading, especially to younger kids, that's why reading freezes time in a sense. Relax, let's go through this book, let's look at the characters. Ooh, do you see a mouse on the page? Or, ooh, look at this word, or, look at this. I mean, it's a time it's timeless. Just take your time, read the stories, have some fun, and just, not everything in the world has to be fast paced 24/7 necessarily.
Absolutely. Hey, we should mention we've alluded to your two children's picture books. We should probably tell folks what they're about. One is called "Why Not Call It Cow Juice."
Well, so let me ask you a question.
All right.
What do you call that white liquid you pour in your cereal?
Milk.
Why? I mean, let me ask you this: what do you get from apples? Come on.
Apple juice.
What do you get from oranges?
Orange juice.
What do you get from grapefruits?
Something I don't want to drink. Grapefruit juice.
So, what do you get from cows? It should be cow juice. I mean, you have to squeeze the cow too, don't you? So the book is all about literal and figurative language, and Dad's kind of strange, but I mean, that's because I'm in the Dad's Union. And our whole family is in the book. So when he thinks about ears of corn, you can picture what he's thinking. When he's thinking heads of lettuce, okay, little eyes and a nose and a mouth, and I'll have some chocolate mousse but no antlers. You know what I mean? So, and the book turns a little bit at the end when he's asking for them to give him a hand with the laundry, and they applaud. So, but it's to have fun with words, and the book itself, again, it's special because our family's in the book. So that what's especially neat now is that when our oldest granddaughter, who's 7, she's known of the book for many years, and she knows that, there's Daddy, there's Auntie Amy, there's Auntie Emily, there's Papa Stevie, and Grandma Sue. And so it's kind of a neat, for me, it's neat, a little family history, a little family tradition.
That is so cool.
Down.
That is so cool. And it's great to have conversations about language and words with our kids, because when you think about it, I mentioned my niece. She's new to our family. She grew up speaking Spanish, and she's still learning English. And there's still a lot of expressions that she just kind of scratches her head about.
Right. Like a hamburger. Is there any ham in a hamburger?
No, ham in a hamburger.
So we had a work. I was going to do a sequel, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. And the working title was A Hospital for Belly Buttons. I mean, what would that be? A naval hospital. So I mean, that's the little giggle. That's the little, and start them thinking. Let them use their imaginations, because all too often at school they're not allowed to. Imagination's legislated out. It's like, here's the prompt, write about this. That's it. And so what reading to the kids does is it shows them there are options. You can have fun with words. You can go in any direction you want to, whether it's a chapter book, whether it's a picture book, you can have fun with the language, have fun with words, and create your own little worlds.
Yeah. As you're talking about that, why not call it cow juice? It sounds like a skit from Monty Python.
Well, it's, if you were to talk to my kids, they say, yeah, my kids have strong eyeballs, from rolling them. Dad, but, some traditions just kind of, that's me. I mean, sometimes it's fun now to hear, I'm sure it's like every family, you all of a sudden, you hated when your dad and mom said such and such, and then, you get older and you open your mouth and your mom and dad pop out with what they used to say.
Yep, absolutely. Now, the other book, children's book that I'm aware is called Have a Nice Nap, Humphrey.
Yes, that's about 3 animal characters. They each have a problem. They help each other solve problems. So, for instance, Humphrey Bear, it's January 27th. It's time to hibernate, but he's just not sleepy. He can't fall asleep. And gets a knock on the door. It's Penelope Penguin, who took the wrong plane and ended up in Miami instead of Minneapolis. So, can I come in? I need some ice cubes. So, yeah, and the next thing you know, Mortimer Monkey, the next door neighbor, he's allergic to bananas. So they help each other. And how's he going to drive his taxi if he's so busy scratching, every time he eats a banana? So they help each other solve problems. So it's nicely illustrated, and it just... Again, it goes to, especially when I'm using that book in classrooms, word choices. Mm-hmm. We don't want the word big. Big is okay, and it's not going to get you a red mark, and it's a simple word, right? But we want huge, enormous, gigantic, humongous, So I'm at one point, Humphrey sits in his big chair, but I changed it to he plopped down into his favorite easy chair, because now you can hear the air rushing out of the cushions with just those words. So we're able to use that book for those kinds of lessons, simple lessons. Mm-hmm. Again, just to expand the kids. And because, again, in my writing workshops, one of the things I like to get across, especially to teachers, is to relax on the mechanics. We'll get to that. That's the last thing. But we can't let the mechanics of writing get in the way of the ideas. We can't let the commas and capital letters be an impediment to getting all those good ideas out there. Because there's no such thing as a bad idea. Some ideas will work better for you than others in certain circumstances. Doesn't mean you were wrong. Doesn't mean it was bad. Just means, okay, maybe we can do even better. Right. That's all. Yeah. And revision, again, showing kids how easy revision is. Just in that example, I will say, give me another word that means big. And the hands shoot up: huge, enormous, gigantic, humongous. And I'll point to one of the students who gave me the word humongous, and I'll say, listen, let me ask you something. Do you have to see a nurse? No. You need a Band-Aid? You bleeding? No. See? Revision is easy. It's not that big a deal. It's painless. Okay? So, simple things like that. And so if we are reading with them from a young age, they're learning, they're getting comfortable with words, because the more you read, it seeps in, and the better the writer you become. It's that connection. Yeah. And so if we can share with them that joy, I even tell teachers, listen, there's no one's going to tell you there's so much time in the day you don't know what to do with it. But there are those times when, 2 minutes before lunch, 3 minutes before recess, 4 minutes before they go home. And my suggestion to them is, especially elementary school, read a picture book for no other reason except to read the book and enjoy it. not for the foreshadowing and the rising action and the dun-dun-duns, just read the book, And so if you bring in, and it's happened, that's, feedback tells me, if you start reading those books, kids start looking forward to that time. Everyone likes to be read to. Mm-hmm. So if you can bring in books that you enjoy, sooner or later over the course of that year, they're going to start to bring in books. Oh, could you read mine today? Could you read mine? And so that's that connection. We all know that not every book they will read in their education will be a book that they're going to really love. Mm-hmm. Okay? Same with writing assignments. Not every writing assignment they're going to fall in love with. And that's okay. That's the job. No job is perfect. Even as a sports writer, it wasn't perfect. There were times you'd ask guys questions and they didn't want to answer them. They just as soon stuff you in a trash can, which I saw happen one time. And so you need to, but they need to see that there are other options. There are other facets to reading and writing where they can enjoy themselves and just let it go, just let it fly. And that comes from the basics of reading to them early on, especially because it's helping with the language skills, but it's also planting that seed that, reading can be fun. I mean, I used to, I'm rambling here a little bit, but I used to, my mother would take us to the Auburn Public Library in Cranston, where I grew up, Rhode Island. And the three of us, my brother, my sister, myself. And I used to love Matt Christopher books, the sports books. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're aware of them. And even by the time we were even home, I probably had gone through just about one of the books, But obviously I remember that, Auburn Public Library was this nice old house, with overstuffed chairs. And it was just, the smell, it was like that musty smell, it was, but that's where, I used to like to read.
Yeah.
And even now, as I got older, I went to Columbia University and I majored in English and I was reading Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and all those big fat books, right? But if I went to a bookstore, I would gravitate all the time right to the children's book department.
Cool.
Pick out another children's book, and when our kids were young, it was Care Bears and Berenstain Bears and, but Marissa Mayer is one of my all-time favorites, Nightmare in My Closet. And then there's Harry and the Terrible What's-It. And that's another thing I wanted to mention is that when you are reading to your kids, to have even more fun with it, change the voices, So Humphrey, for instance, in my Have a Nice Nap Humphrey, here it is, January 27th, I can't sleep. I need to hibernate. Or Penelope Penguin, well, just recite the alphabet frontwards and backwards 3 times. And, so just you change the voices up. Mm-hmm. Or with our own kids, it came to where, bedtime was fun. I used to miss bedtimes because I was traveling at times, covering the Red Sox. But to be able to sit on the bed with the 3 of them as they were getting older, we ended up with what we called a bonking game. Pillow fight kind of game. When I would read the story, I would make mistakes on purpose. Mm. Well, number one, it was helping make sure they were listening to what I was saying, And if I messed up, because, when I lost my hair, I lost my memory. Things happen. So they could hit me on the head with a pillow, And it worked okay until Emily, the youngest, would pass her possibility over to my son, who would just really wail away. I said, all right. But, again, it was just a fun time, and now my wife and I are fortunate to have grandchildren that we can, sit on our laps and we read them stories, and it's just neat.
Yeah. So neat. I love that. And, one of the things I was thinking about as we were talking, and you were talking about how easy it is to do revisions and to help kids understand that when they're writing and you have to revise something, it doesn't have to be a painful process. One thing that might be a lot of fun is as you're going through and reading a book, maybe it's the 5th or 6th time you're reading that picture book. When you come to a word like big, you just ask your kids, hey, what's a different word we could use here? Let's rewrite this story ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. There are all so many ways to make it interactive, when you're reading. You don't want to make it a school lesson. You don't want to make it a lecture. But, things come up naturally and normally, and they'll bring them up too.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of there's so many good books out there. So many.
So many. Yes, and we can't forget, why not call it Cow Juice and Have a Nice Nap, Humphrey. Those are two excellent picture books that you should check out. You should also check out Steve's website and find out how you might be able to bring Steven into your classroom or into your kids' classroom. You can share the information with your school teacher or your kid's teacher or principal. So tell them where they can go to find out more about that place.
They can go to, it's easy to remember, www.nudgingtheimagination. And I call the program that because everyone has a creative muscle, and as with any muscle, it needs exercise. So we need to nudge them. And I might also add one other of my picture books, if I may.
Sure.
It's a nonfiction book. It's called The Longest Game. The longest game in professional baseball history was played in Rhode Island, in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, in 1981. The game lasted 33 innings. It was so long, it started in April and ended in June. Because they played 32 innings the first night, and at 4 o'clock in the morning they said, okay, that's it, enough. Finish the game. The next time Rochester, that's the team they're playing, visits Pawtucket, which happened to be in June. So, and the starting third baseman in that game as minor leaguers were Cal Ripken and Wade Boggs.
Wow.
They ended up Hall of Famers, but at that point in their career in 1981, they were minor leaguers. They'd never played so much as an inning in the big leagues. So that's a nonfiction picture book that I have.
Wow, that is excellent. And this is a good time. You know, we're encouraging folks to support small independent bookshops. Of course,
right.
You know, you can order things on Amazon, and that's especially now, that's a fantastic service to have. But small indie bookshops are great for us to support. Mm-hmm. And I want to give a plug to minor league baseball, minor league hockey. You know, to go to, unfortunately, you go to the Red Sox at Fenway Park. It's a beautiful experience. It's, as we say here in Boston, it's a wicked expensive experience. It can be $500 when you add up parking and tickets and a hot dog and a program to see a baseball game at Fenway Park. Meanwhile, you can get in your car. You could have driven 40 minutes south to Pawtucket. Now you're going to have to drive 40 minutes west to Worcester to see what's becoming the Woo Sox, see that minor league baseball team. If you have kids, they're not going to know the difference between AAA and Major League.
Right.
It's just a wonderful, wonderful night out. And you can go to a minor league game and spend $20 for your whole family, and it's a fantastic time.
Again, it's that connection, the bonding family experience, much like reading, with your kids. It's that connection.
It's that time we're spending with each other. When you, as a parent, as a grandparent, as a caregiver, when you take time out of your day and you devote it to your kids, whether it's taking 20 minutes a night to read to them, taking 3 or 4 hours to go to a ball game, it's that time. You're the most important person in your kid's life, and you're letting them know how important they are because you're putting everything else aside to be with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Memories. You're making memories is what you're doing.
Well, this is going to be a great memory for me, speaking with Steven Krasner, the driving force behind Nudging the Imagination, the author of The Longest Game, Why Not Call It Cow Juice, and Have a Nice Nap, Humphrey. Steven, thank you so much for being part of our show.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be John Clausen. He'll be here to celebrate the rock from the sky. It's a really, really fun conversation. You don't want to miss it. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Want to thank the folks who make today's show so wonderful. Of course, want to start by thanking our guest, Steve Krasner. Be sure to check out his Nudging the Imagination website. Also check out his fun kids books. I also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Alexia Brown, Hannah Pat Oboyski. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.